I would now come to my presentation. It is, we have quite a wide spread now because we started with the updates from all the regional organizations and the EPA negotiations, and especially the presentation from Professor Erasmus was in some parts very much on the micro level, interesting stories about the truck driver in Congo and the border points in Namibia. And what I'm doing now is something very different because I look on trade patterns from a very macro perspective. And I'm not looking only on recent updates, but I'm looking on trade patterns from the 1990s onwards. And I'm asking myself, which influence do these trade patterns have on the path of regional integration in different regional organizations? And vice versa, which influence do regional agreements have on these trade patterns? So I start with the very old and well-known statement of classic trade theory, which basically tells us that developing regions, developing countries and emerging markets should not profit as much from regional integration as industrialized regions. The classic example for this is always the low number of intra-regional trade in most regional organizations in Africa, South America, and also in Asia. In Asia, they are somewhat higher than in South America and than in Southern Africa, but they are still below 25%, and this is compared to the European Union of now around 60 to 66% of intra-regional trade. Nevertheless, since the beginning of the 1990s, we can see during the latest wave of the so-called new regionalism that also developing regions, especially developing regions, reinforce their efforts to integrate their economies. And what I'm asking myself is, given that traditional trade theory tells us that there's not much to gain from that, why do they do that? And when answering the question, why do they do that, the next question is then, how will their motives affect the course of regional integration? And I start with, I try to keep my theory session a little bit short. I think most of you are probably interested in the empirical results. However, I need some short remarks on theory. First of all, I would like to distinguish between the intra and the extra-regional effects of regional integration. With intra-regional effects, I basically mean what's going on in the European Union. You liberalize trade, then trade is increasing, you need to regulate the trade, it's always increasing and so on, and we can see increasing numbers of intra-regional trade since the 1950s until today. And of course, this brings a lot of economic profits for the member states of the European Union, especially for Germany, and that is also one reason why Germany at the moment cannot risk that the euro is going down, because the economic gains are much too high for that. On the other hand, I would argue regional integration also have extra-regional effects. And this is very important in the global competition for investments, foreign direct investments especially, and for export markets, because regional integration has size and stability effects for the integrated regions. Size effects is if you have an integrated regional market, this market is bigger than a single country market, which means you may be more attractive for foreign direct investment. With stability effects, I mean that, of course, regional integration should have some positive effects on political stability. And in Asia, we can also see that it has an impact on macroeconomic stability because they have the Shanghai initiatives there. So this these size and stability effects of regional integration should have positive effects on the intra-regional dimension for developing regions and emerging markets. However, the problem here is that although developing regions can profit from regional integration collectively, they also compete with each other about export markets and foreign direct investments. They do not only compete with other regions for that, they also compete with their regional neighbors. So South Africa may compete for investment shares, for foreign direct investment with other countries from the region. And now the next problem may be that some of the member states of a region may profit even more if they don't integrate regionally, but if they try to gain privileges in their extra-regional relations by defecting from regional integration and taking unilateral action. And I would argue this risk of defecting, I call that Ramble behavior. I apologize for the phrase Ramble behavior. It had nothing to do with Sylvester Stallone. It's a phrase from game theory, and I didn't invent it, so I'm only partly to blame for it, but it's a situation in which one member state or one player in the game wants to cooperate and the other player has a dominant interest in defection. So it's a kind of a mixture of a deadlock game and a cooperation game. And I would argue this, the likelihood of such Ramble behavior increases if we have large asymmetries, with economic asymmetries within the region, because large member states are more likely to gain privileges in the extra-regional relations because they are the biggest markets and they are most interesting in the region for foreign direct investments and as trading partners. And at the same time, the big countries, of course, have less to gain from regional integration than the smaller countries. For Namibia, Botswana, or other countries in the region, access to the South African market is very crucial. However, on the other hand, I would argue, even if some of you will tell me the opposite, to be honest, that for South Africa, exports within the region are still considerably low if compared to that to the European Union. The trade of South Africa with the European Union is around 30% of South Africa's external trade. Trade within the region is only 10% approximately. So so the regional trade for South Africa is 1/3 of the trade to the European Union. So where does that bring us? I would argue now when we have these kind of different economic structures, this brings us to three different developmental paths. The first one is the European Union path, where we have an economic structure which is distinguished by high levels of intra-regional interdependence, trade above intra-regional trade of more than 50%. This, at the micro level, this leads to the fact that the member states have a stable interest in integration because they have to regulate their ever-increasing trade numbers. This then leads to regional cooperation, regional institutions are set up, and the economic structure of the region is reinforced, which means regional trade is increasing even more with, until now, to more than 66%. Then we have a second path, and we can call that the Asian path, or the ASEAN path, from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This is distinguished by a high degree of extra-regional interdependence. So the most important trading partners of the Asian countries are not their neighbors, but are the United States and Europe, later also China, but China is not part of the ASEAN. Here, the member states also have a stable interest in regional integration because they use regional integration in order to bargain about preferential trade agreements with China, Japan, and South Korea. And they also have the Changmei Initiative, which is also based on an agreement between the ASEAN states, China, Japan, and South Korea. So here we can also see regional cooperation, which leads to the establishment, to the reinforcement of regional institutions. There was a lot of stuff going on in the last years in the ASEAN. For example, the Charter, they adopted a Charter in ASEAN and many other regional institutions. And also the economic structure, which I will demonstrate you later, indicates that the trade with the external partners was increasing. Finally, we have one path, and we can call it the Southern African path, where we have also an economic structure which is distinguished by very important extra-regional economic relations, but where we have one member state which is extremely big and extremely important in comparison to the other member states, and which has privileges in its relationships to its extra-regional trade partners, which is the European Union. And what results from that? I would argue that the result is that South Africa may have an interest in defection from regional integration in order not to endanger its privileges in its extra-regional relations. The result will then be that South Africa prefers its extra-regional agreements to regional agreements, and that we will see increasing economic asymmetries in the region instead of declining economic asymmetries. Okay, now I hope that it starts. I will now show you trade networks of the three regions which I just mentioned. What you can see here in the moving pictures are the member states of the respective regions. This is European Union in dark blue, and the three most important imports and exports of the member states in black, and the three most and then in light blue are the three most important extra-regional members. I think at the moment it should be the United States. Which year are we? We are in the 70s. Switzerland, United States, and I don't know whether we are before or after the access to. No, this is northern. This was the first northern enlargement. So United Kingdom came in, and Denmark came in. And what you can basically see here is that the picture is relatively dark, especially in the center, and that means that the intra-regional, the regional member states are at the core of the trade networks. The most important traders in the European trade networks are European Community member states. And the light blue member states, not member states, sorry, the light blue countries you can see here, United States, Switzerland, I can't see from here which, wait a moment, which is Switzerland at the moment, United States and Japan are very much at the periphery and by far not as important for the trade network than the regional member states. Now we are coming close to the implementation of the single European market. So you can see that intra-regional trade is ever increasing since the very beginnings. The very big bubble in the middle is Germany, which is at this time by far the most important trader within the European Union. And at the periphery, there's Japan is on the top, and the light bubble to the left is the United States. We are now coming to the turn of the millennium, and you can, in a few moments, you will see why Germany and France were in favor of Eastern enlargement. You know that Eastern enlargement imposes big problems for the institutions and the policies of the European Union, but you will now see what it made economically, and it blows up the whole regional network, and now you see how the trade numbers of France and Germany increased due to the Eastern enlargement. And the two countries are very much at the core of the trade network, and they should have a stable interest in the well-functioning of the single market. And in the meantime, we are now in 2010, where we have a common currency since 10 years now. They should also have a stable interest in keeping that currency in order not to endanger their markets within the region. Now we see, as in a comparison to that, we see the ASEAN network. And what you can see on first look is that the light blue bubbles are at the center of the trade network. And the light blue bubbles are the extra-regional trade partners. These are at the moment Japan, United States, and the European Union. Japan is an extra-regional trade partner because it doesn't take part in the ASEAN process. Now we have 1997. This is the Asian crisis now. I don't know why it's not working properly. I hope that it behaves better now. Oh my God. That is Murphy's Law. Yeah? It worked rather well when I prepared it, and when I try to demonstrate it, nothing goes. I think I tried it at least 5 times before. Okay, I'm sorry for that. I hope that it's better now. So keep an eye on the numbers, on the year numbers, because in 1997 we have the Asian crisis, and you can see the result of the Asian crisis, and that is that the recovery after the Asian crisis also took mainly mainly went through extra-regional trade. Yeah? So after the Asian crisis, this is now, we do not see increasing intra-regional trade numbers, but increasing extra-regional trade numbers. So the Asian countries recovered by increasing their exports to the rest of the world, which are mainly Japan and European Union and the United States. And later, that will also be China. Oh my God. Really, I tried it 5 times at least. Trudy is my, Trudy can tell you. Okay, but I think the picture should become clear. We have the extra-regional trade partners in the center, but we have a situation where all member states were able to profit from regional integration because they improved their relationships with their extra-regional trade partners in the so-called ASEAN +3 process, which is the Chiang Mai initiative, which is a liquidity funds for the Asian countries, and which are 3 free trade areas. And now we have SADC. And what you see first is the very big blue bubble in the middle. This is the European Union. This is a sign of the economic importance of the European Union for trade in Southern Africa. And the dark blue bubble at the top right is at this time SACU. We don't have trade numbers for the single SACU member states up till the turn of the millennium. Now we have South Africa and the smaller countries as well. But still you can see we are now already after the turn of the millennium, and the process of the trade development and cooperation agreement and its implementation went on. We have increasing trade between South Africa, which is the dark blue bubble in the middle, and the European Union. And the smaller member states are at the periphery. The only other big trader is Angola, which exports oil to China, mainly to China, but also to the European Union. And all other member states are very much at the periphery and trade much either with South Africa or with the European Union. So what are my conclusions? I would argue that dynamic network analysis supports the hypothesis that we can see different paths of regional integration going on, depending on the economic structures within the region. What we can also see is that it does not look like that regional integration significantly changes or alters these paths of these trade patterns. So regional integration do not really seem to lead to a boom of intra-regional trade when there was no trade before. However, it seems to be more reinforcing existing trends. Integration theories, and this is a little bit the lesson for my colleagues in Europe, integration theories need to conceptualize these different economic background conditions if they want some really comparative studies which go beyond the European case. And some advertising, also, please allow me also some advertising. If you're interested in these trade networks and if you want to use them for your own research, you can download them on my webpage in static form and in animated movies. And I hope that when you download them, that they will properly work. Thank you for your attention.